Stop scrolling, because one of these 3 ordinary-looking quarters could have a story you've never heard before. Right now, somewhere in America, a forgotten jar of coins is sitting on a shelf. A small box of loose change is hidden inside a dresser. A handful of quarters is waiting inside someone's car. Most people will never stop to look at them. They'll spend them without a second thought. But today, everything changes. Imagine opening an old wooden box that belonged to your grandfather. Inside are family photographs, old letters, a faded pocket watch, and 3 Washington quarters placed carefully inside a small envelope. You remove them one by one. The first coin, 1977, the second, 986, and the third, 1991. 3 ordinary dates, 3 ordinary quarters. Or are they? At first glance, they all look almost identical. The familiar portrait of George Washington. The same eagle on the reverse. The same 25 cents that millions of Americans have carried in their pockets. But experienced collectors know something most people never realize. Coins are more than money. They're tiny pieces of American history. Every scratch tells a story. Every mark records another journey. Every year represents a different chapter inside the United States Mint. Now imagine where these 3 quarters may have traveled. Perhaps the 1977 quarter helped someone buy their first baseball ticket. Maybe the 1986 quarter passed through hundreds of businesses during one of America's fastest-growing decades. Perhaps the 1991 quarter crossed the country inside the wallet of a traveler, visiting places they would never forget. No one knows. And that's exactly what makes coin collecting so fascinating. Every coin has lived a life that history books can never fully explain. Now place all 3 quarters beside each other, under a bright white light. Immediately, you notice something. Although they share the same design, they've aged very differently. The 1977 quarter carries the marks of time. The 1986 quarter still shows surprising detail. The 1991 quarter reflects light in a completely different way. Suddenly, they no longer look identical. Each coin has developed its own personality, its own history, its own story. Collectors understand something important. The excitement isn't only about searching for rare coins. It's about learning to see details that everyone else ignores. A stronger strike, cleaner lettering, better eye appeal, original mint luster. Tiny differences that completely change how a coin is appreciated. That's why experienced collectors never rush. They slow down, they compare, they observe. Because every discovery begins with curiosity. Imagine visiting your local bank. You exchange $20 for a roll of quarters. You return home, open the roll. One coin after another slides across the table. Most dates are common. Nothing catches your attention. Then, suddenly, you spot one of the years sitting in front of you. A few coins later. Then, 3 different years. 3 different stories. One incredible journey through American history. What makes these quarters interesting isn't simply their age. It's everything they've experienced over the decades. Millions of hands have touched coins just like these. They've traveled through restaurants, movie theaters, gas stations, shopping malls, vending machines, banks, and countless family homes. Yet somehow, some examples survived in beautiful condition, while others spent decades in heavy circulation. Why? That's exactly the mystery we're about to explore. Over the next few chapters, we'll take a closer look at each of these 3 Washington quarters. Discover what collectors pay attention to. Learn how to examine them like an experienced coin hunter, and uncover the fascinating history hiding inside these everyday American coins. Because sometimes, the most ordinary pocket change, holds the most extraordinary stories. The journey begins with the oldest coin on the table, the 1977 Washington quarter. At first glance, it doesn't seem special. Millions of Americans have seen this date before. Some have spent it at grocery stores. Others dropped it into arcade machines. Many never even looked at the year before spending it. But imagine if this coin could talk. What stories would it tell? Picture America in 1977 payphones. Stood on street corners. Movie theaters sold tickets for only a few dollars. People carried cash everywhere. Credit cards were far less common than they are today. Everyday purchases depended on coins like this one. The 1977 Washington quarter wasn't sitting inside a display case. It was working, traveling from one city to another, from one pocket, another, from one family to the next. It paid for lunches, bus fares, parking, meters, laundry machines, and countless cups of coffee. Every transaction became another chapter in its journey. Now imagine that same quarter surviving all those decades. 40 years later, it finally lands in your hand. Would you even notice it? Most people wouldn't. Collectors would. The first thing experienced collectors examine isn't the date alone. It's the condition. Hold the coin beneath a bright light. Slowly rotate it. Does the surface still show flashes of original mint luster? Are Washington's hair details still visible? Is the lettering in Liberty bold and sharp? Does the eagle on the reverse still display strong feather details? These small observations tell an incredible story. Heavily worn coin may have spent decades in constant circulation. A brighter example may have rested inside a coin album or an old collection for years. Neither story is wrong. They're simply different. That's what makes every coin unique. Another fascinating detail collectors study is the strike. Every Washington quarter began as a plain metal blank called a planche. Inside the United States Mint, massive presses struck the design into the metal using tremendous force. Fresh dies produced crisp, sharp details. As those dies aged, tiny differences slowly appeared. Some quarters show slightly stronger details than others, not because they're different designs, but because every die changes over time. Collectors also inspect the edge of the coin. The reeded edge should appear even and complete. Then, they compare multiple examples side by side. The differences become easier to see. One coin shines more brightly. Another has smoother surfaces. Another shows decades of honest circulation. Every coin tells its own story. Imagine searching through an old family coin jar. Hundreds of coins spill across the kitchen table. You begin sorting them by date. Most are modern. Then, suddenly, a 1977 Washington quarter appears. You almost place it aside, but something tells you to look one more time. You hold it beneath the light. For the first time, you notice details you've never paid attention to before. The rim, the lettering, the portrait, the reverse. Suddenly, that ordinary quarter feels different. Not because it's magical, not because it's guaranteed to be valuable, but because you've learned how to truly see it. That's the moment every collector remembers. The moment pocket change stops being ordinary and starts becoming history. Because every old quarter has traveled a road no one can completely trace. It has passed through thousands of hands, visited places you'll never know, witnessed moments history will never record, and somehow, after all those years, it found its way to you. After exploring the long journey of the 1977 Washington quarter, it's time to move forward almost a decade to a coin that millions of Americans have held without ever realizing its remarkable story. The 1986 Washington Quarter. Imagine waking up on a summer morning in 1986. People are rushing to work. Children are riding bicycles through their neighborhoods. Shopping malls are crowded. Cash registers never stop ringing. Thousands of Washington quarters leave banks that very morning and begin another day in circulation. One of them could be the exact same quarter now resting in your collection. Think about that. For nearly 40 years, this coin has quietly traveled across America. It may have crossed state lines dozens of times. It may have been carried inside the pocket of a construction worker, a teacher, a college student, or a family heading out on vacation. Every owner added another chapter to its journey, yet despite decades of circulation, some 1986 quarters still surprise collectors with their outstanding appearance. Imagine opening an old family coin album. Most pages contain ordinary coins collected over many years. As you slowly turn another page, a brilliant 1986 Washington quarter catches your attention. Its surface immediately reflects the light. Washington's portrait remains sharp. The lettering appears bold and complete. The eagle still displays impressive detail. You stop for a moment. How did this coin survive in such beautiful condition? Perhaps someone placed it inside this album shortly after it left the United States Mint. Perhaps it spent years inside an unopened bankroll. Maybe it simply escaped the heavy wear that affected millions of other quarters. Collectors understand something important. Every coin has its own life story. Some spend decades moving from one cash register to another. Others quietly wait inside collections, protected from scratches and wear. Neither journey is more important. They're simply different. Now imagine placing 3 different 1986 quarters, side by side. At first, they appear identical, but as you study them more carefully, the differences begin to emerge. One coin has brighter original luster, another displays stronger strike details. A third shows years of honest circulation. Tiny differences become surprisingly obvious once you know where to look. That's why experienced collectors rarely examine only one coin. Comparison reveals details that otherwise remain hidden. Many collectors also use a simple magnifying loupe. Under magnification, the coin becomes an entirely different world. Minute die cracks, small die chips, tiny polishing lines left on the dies, subtle minting characteristics, invisible to the naked eye, suddenly become clear. These aren't flaws. They're part of the coin's manufacturing history. They remind us that every quarter passed through enormous minting presses, operating under incredible pressure. Each die slowly changed over time. Each production run left behind small clues, and every coin preserved part of that history forever. The longer you study coins, the more fascinating those tiny details become. One day, you receive change after buying groceries. Without thinking, you glance at the quarters in your hand. Then, one date catches your eye. 1986. Instead of spending it immediately, you pause. You remember everything you've learned. You hold it beneath the light. You compare it with another quarter. Suddenly, an ordinary moment becomes an exciting discovery, not because you've found a fortune, but because you've learned to notice what millions of people overlook every single day. That's the real reward of coin collecting. Knowledge, curiosity, and the excitement of discovering history hidden in plain sight because somewhere. Another beautiful 1986 Washington quarter is still waiting inside a forgotten coin jar, a dusty dresser drawer, or perhaps already sitting quietly in your own pocket. waiting for someone to notice it. Now we arrive at the youngest coin in today's collection, the 1991 Washington quarter. At first, many people assume a newer coin couldn't possibly have an interesting story. But collectors know better. Every coin begins its journey on the day it leaves the United States Mint. Everything that happens afterward becomes part of its history. Imagine America in 1991. Shopping malls are busy. Video rental stores are everywhere. Arcade machines are filled with players. Payphones still stand on busy streets. Every single day, thousands of newly minted Washington quarters begin entering circulation. Among them, your 1991 quarter. It starts its journey inside a bank, then moves into a cash register. Later, it's handed to a customer buying groceries. A few days later, it's dropped into a vending machine. Then it travels through dozens of wallets, purses, and cash drawers. Month after month, year after year, the journey continues. Now imagine that same quarter surviving more than 3 decades. One afternoon, while cleaning your room, you find an old jar of loose change. You pour everything onto the table: pennies, nickels, dimes, then several Washington quarters. Most are heavily worn. Then one catches your eye. 991. You pick it up, turn it slowly beneath a bright lamp. Something feels different. The coin still shows flashes of its original mint luster. Washington's portrait is surprisingly sharp. The lettering remains bold. The eagle on the reverse still displays excellent detail. Immediately, you begin asking questions. Has this coin spent years inside a collection? Did it avoid heavy circulation? Or was it simply protected by chance? Collectors love these questions because every coin tells its story through its condition. The better the preservation, the more clearly that story can be seen. Experienced collectors never rush their inspection. They compare several examples side by side. Small differences begin appearing. One coin has cleaner fields. Another has stronger strike details. Another reflects light more evenly. These subtle differences often go unnoticed by the average person, but collectors train their eyes to recognize them. They also understand that patience matters. Sometimes the best discoveries happen after examining hundreds of ordinary coins. Not because every search ends with something unusual, but because every search improves your knowledge. And knowledge is one of the greatest rewards in coin collecting. Imagine opening one final bankroll before ending your search for the day. You've already looked through dozens of quarters. Nothing remarkable. Then, the last coin rolls onto the table, a bright 1991 Washington quarter. You smile, not because you expect it to be extraordinary, but because you've learned something important. Every coin deserves a closer look. That simple habit changes everything. It transforms spare change into history. It transforms curiosity into knowledge, and it reminds us that even the most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary journeys. Now place all 3 coins together: the 1977, the 1986, and the 1991, 3 different years, 3 different decades, 3 different journeys, yet all connected by one incredible story. They've crossed America, passed through millions of hands, witnessed countless everyday moments, and somehow, after all those years, they ended up together in your collection. That's what makes coin collecting so special. Not just the coins, but the stories they carry. Now look at all 3 coins together: the 1977, the 1986, and the 1991 Washington quarter. 3 different years, 3 different decades, 3 different journeys. Yet today, they're resting side by side. Imagine how many miles these 3 coins have traveled. One may have crossed the country in the pocket of a truck driver. Another may have sat inside a child's piggy bank for years. Another may have remained hidden in a family coin collection until someone finally opened the box decades later. No one knows, and that's exactly why collectors never lose their curiosity. Every coin has a history that can never be completely told. That's what makes this hobby so exciting. It isn't only about finding something unusual, it's about discovering the stories hidden inside everyday objects. Now imagine placing all 3 quarters under a bright LED light. You slowly rotate each one. The 1977 shows the character of decades spent in circulation. The 1986 still displays impressive detail and eye appeal. The 1991 reflects flashes of original mint luster that immediately catch your attention. They all look similar, yet every one of them has aged differently. Collectors call this learning to see. At first, every quarter looks the same. But after studying dozens, then hundreds, then thousands, tiny differences begin standing out immediately. You start noticing stronger strikes, cleaner lettering, sharper details, better preserved surfaces. You begin seeing history where everyone else sees spare change. Imagine visiting your local bank one final time. You exchange $20 for a roll of quarters. Back home, you carefully open the roll. The coins slide across your table. Your eyes automatically begin checking the dates. Not because someone told you to, but because curiosity has become a habit. One coin after another passes beneath the light. Maybe you don't find a 1977. Maybe you don't find a 1986. Maybe you don't find a 1991. That's perfectly okay. Because every search teaches something new. Every coin improves your experience. And every roll reminds you why millions of people enjoy coin collecting around the world. The greatest reward isn't always discovering an unusual coin. Sometimes, the greatest reward is realizing how much you've learned. You now notice details that most people never see. You appreciate the craftsmanship behind every coin. You understand that every scratch, every mark, and every tiny imperfection tells part of a journey that has lasted for decades. That's something no price tag can measure. So before you spend another quarter, pause, look at the date, study the details, compare it with another coin. Ask yourself one simple question. What story does this coin carry? You may never know every answer, but that's exactly what keeps this hobby alive. Thank you for joining us today on Hidden Coin Digest. If you enjoyed exploring the stories behind the 1977, 1986, and 1991 Washington quarters, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Hidden Coin Digest. Turn on the notification bell and join our community of collectors who love discovering the hidden history behind America's everyday coins. Every week we explore fascinating quarters, coin collecting tips, minting history, and the incredible stories hiding in ordinary pocket change. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and leave a comment below. Which of these 3 quarters, 1977, 1986, or 1991, is your favorite? And have you ever found one in your pocket change? Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, keep checking every coin, because the next quarter you receive could be the one that changes the way you look at pocket change forever. We'll see you in the next Hidden Coin Digest video.